I'm sure we have the file here somewhere.
I think it may have been a paper copy. Perhaps.
Maybe it's just mislabeled?
I'm going to be blunt here. How do you all expect me to make an informed decision if I don't have the information in front of me?
This is not a scenario any of us wants to be in. Our boss needs critical information to make a decision that affects airmen and guardians, and you have no clue where that information is. Creating, maintaining, and disposing records properly ensures we have the information needed to make critical decisions. It also ensures the public can access federal records under Freedom of Information Act conditions. Each one of us plays a role here.
So what exactly is a federal record?
A federal record is anything you type, write down, film, or record that is finalized, signed, or uploaded to meet a tasker or to do your job. Draft documents, working files, copies, and reference materials are not federal records, but could still be requested through FOIA requests, litigation holds, and other searches. So it makes sense to keep them organized in a way that you can find them again later.
Makes sense.
Every record's life cycle has 3 stages: the creation or receipt of the record, maintenance and use of the record, and finally, disposition. That's not how you dispose of a record, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The vast majority of Air Force records are temporary in nature and only need to be held after a set period of months, years, or when a special event occurs. Only about 2 to 5% of Air Force records will end up being permanently stored in the National Archives. Even though most records are temporary and eventually destroyed, they all have a life cycle that must be managed. A record schedule can be found in AFRAMS by going to the Air Force portal. Once there, navigate to the Air Force Records Disposition Schedule. The RDS is composed of tables and rules which are legal records retentions approved by the National Archives. Keeping records any longer than required by law needlessly exposes the agency to increased burden by making the agency continue to maintain, protect, and release records that the agency isn't even supposed to have anymore. If you receive a record search due to litigation, the normal dispositions of affected records are suspended. Your records POC will have detailed instructions for you if that occurs. Other than that, keep them for as long as you must, then properly dispose of them as soon as the RDS allows. Hopefully, you're not keeping many paper records these days. Whenever possible, go electronic. Federal records should be created on government computers. They're less vulnerable to damage and can be available to those who telework. These IT systems need to have regularly scheduled backups ready and accessible as needed to prevent data loss and to meet the requirements listed in the RDS. There may be times when you will make a note on a non-government system. When that does occur, be sure to provide a copy on a government system within 48 hours. Another helpful tip is if you end up responding to a work-related inquiry from a non-government email, CC your official email to maintain proper records accountability. In the course of our jobs, we sometimes have to handle records that include personally identifiable information. PII is information that can be used to distinguish or trace a person's identity. Information like a social security number, date of birth, bank account information, or even a name if that information can be linked to a specific individual.
Is that paperwork you were looking for?
Thank you. Whenever you collect PII, you must provide a Privacy Act statement. The Privacy Act of 1974 requires agencies to protect against any anticipated threats or hazards to the security or integrity of records which could result in substantial harm, embarrassment, inconvenience, or unfairness to any individual whom information is maintained. Can you think of times where the government or the private sector didn't handle privacy as well as they should? Sometimes it may just be a bad news day, but for some, it can be a real threat to your credit and worse, your legal identity. The Privacy Act also states a system of records notice must be in place when collecting PII that is retrieved by name or personal identifier in a system of records. A SORN informs the public what you are collecting, who you are collecting it from, how you will use the information, and who you can share the information with. And if that information must include a social security number, the DoD requires a justification memo be included. Most of us work hard every day to ensure records are maintained well and that important data isn't put into the wrong hands. But sometimes, a record may be misplaced or inadvertently destroyed. Notify your local records professional at once of the issue.
I think I may have disposed of these records incorrectly.
If misplaced data contains PII, you're looking at a PII breach, which does require additional measures be taken. A PII breach can be the loss of control of a record containing PII, a person other than an authorized user's attempt to access PII, or an authorized user accessing PII for a purpose that is not authorized. When a breach does occur, notify your privacy manager and they'll take it from there. Sloppy record keeping has real-world consequences to consider. There's the obvious ones of public embarrassment, but also the not-so-obvious ones that link directly to national security. While a lot of attention is paid to nation-states and bad actors hacking records, we still see instances of poor record keeping placing sensitive data into the hands of the highest bidder. But thankfully, that won't be you, right? Also remember, when separating from a unit of the Air Force, follow guidance on what records and non-records you can take with you. Records are still the property of the Air Force. All right, before we wrap up, there's one more thing we need to discuss. Social media. Yep, it's a thing. And even though your unit's very creative use of the latest viral meme may not constitute an official federal record, anything that contains substantial information about Air Force business is. Capture it, make a copy, and save it to your unit's record-keeping system. That's surface level, folks. And if you need more in-depth information or you have questions about PII or records management, check in with your local privacy manager or records professional. You can also explore compliance.af.mil for more information and resources.